Hi there, I'm Johanna Lee, and today I wanted to talk about pivot tables. And the reason why I want to do that is because today at work I heard a manager talk to a new hire and say, can you just pivot the detail? And it got me thinking about, when I knew what a pivot table was. And I couldn't come up with the time that I knew and didn't know what a pivot table is, which probably sounds ridiculous. But for those of you that don't know what a pivot table is, this video is for you. Even just like the intro pieces to a pivot table. And so really want to kind of just do like a step by step of, someone comes by you and says, hey, pivot it. Or, can you pivot the details? And if you don't know what that is, don't feel bad. At some point in time, I also didn't know what that was. So, anyway, right here on the screen, I have just a data set of transactions and the vendor and the category of the transactions. And so sometimes, if you have an expense spreadsheet, you might have like a food category, a beauty category, a home category, however you delineate different expenses. That's kind of a data dump of what I have here. So if someone came to me and came over my shoulder and says, hey, can you pivot that detail? What I would do is I would select all of the information. So Control A is the best way to do that. I feel like, or if you go to Control Over and Control Down, also a way that you can capture all of the data. And so the next thing is you're going to say insert pivot table. And so as you can see here, pivot table from table or range. And so if something that I used to do a lot when I first started doing a lot of pivot tables is I would say like, yep, that's correct. And I want the pivot table here. And I'd click OK. And it would be like, giving me this really long error and I'm like, what did I do wrong? The thing that you did wrong is that, you want the table range for this. So, this is a variable expenses table. So I have to select it all again. And then I want the pivot table to be placed somewhere else. So if I'm trying to indicate like, hey, I want this over here, you need to make sure that your cursor has moved down to the second option. So the first one is collecting all the data. The second one is where do you want the pivot table to land? I almost always just do a new worksheet. So what that looks like is the table, hitting pivot table, this is correct. And then I'll say new worksheet and okay. New worksheet is the default as well. So that's often probably why I do that, where I'll select it. Also, this is a range instead of a table, so I can show you how that looks. So you go to the Insert tab and you go to Pivot Table. And so this will give me a range of cells B1 through F3612. And so as you can see, if you name a table, it'll just be like variable expenses or whatever you name the table. If you have a range, it'll show you all of the rows that are inclusive in that range that you want to pivot. So, select all of that, and then I'll hit enter. And so it'll be a very similar um, pivot table as well. So, same thing for table and range. And the reason why I'm showing you guys that is because if you go to pivot table, the option where it says from table/range, that is what I'm working with here. So it's, a table that is named as such. So as you can see here, this is the name of the table, variable expenses. If I select it all, that's what it's named. And here, you just have the D35, reference. So that's kind of how you can tell if it's a named table, is if the name reference here will include the table name. And so anyway, your starting point is exactly the same. So if someone comes over, says pivot the details, whatever, that's the first step. Select all the data that they're talking about, go to the Insert tab and hit Pivot Table. I use pivot tables a lot, so I also have it on my quick access bar. So I'll do this again, select all and then hit Alt and 1. for my pivot table selection there. And so I'll click enter again. Make sure you don't, if you want it on this existing spreadsheet, make sure you go ahead and toggle down so that you're not changing this table range when you insert the detail there. So that is kind of the main basics for pivot tables. Another thing that I'll say before I end this video is the 4 things that are in a pivot table. So for example, I'll have a day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then maybe I'll do the total. So the sum of the total. So the way that the pivot table works is it has 4 options here. So the row will remove duplicates and just show what is in that detail. So as you can see from, the expense table, there's tons of Mondays, tons of Tuesdays, tons of Wednesdays, etc. And so what this will show, it'll remove duplicates and really condense it there. So that's the first thing it'll do. And then you assign a value. So, say I want, sum of total. If it is a number field, it'll automatically do sum. If it is so category is not a number field, it'll automatically do count. So it's counting the time that Sunday has a category in it. So that is kind of how that works. You can always change it. So for example, I'm in Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I want a total, but I actually want like the count of how many times it hit this. What I can do is I can change it to count. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but just so you know, when you get that person coming over your shoulder saying pivot the detail, we walk through the steps on how to get to this point, but those are the main concepts where, say you add a category here to values, you're going to want to change value setting to like reflect what they want. So like I said, the default, if it's a number, will be sum. The default, if it's a category, will be count, but you can change that out as well. The other thing too is filters. So those will come up at the top. So say, you're working through this and you're saying like, hey, I want to make this pretty. If you add a filter, it will always be 2 rows above the pivot table. And so if you're working with kind of like details above and you're formatting it pretty, but you eventually want a filter, I would definitely recommend putting in the filter first. So for example, this person shops at Amazon, so you can click there and see, when do I shop at Amazon the most? It's going to be Monday, which is odd for this data set, but you kind of get the insights there. So that's the filter option, and then columns option is going to go across. So, for Sunday, the beauty products, I almost always, or, what doesn't matter based on category, for example. So for Sunday, I'm looking at these across, and my grand total on Sunday spend is $1,000. And so maybe you're looking to see, are there trends within different categories? So those are the 4 things: your filters, your columns, your rows, and then your values that kind of populate the table. So I hope this was helpful. I know I kind of jumped around. There's a lot to pivot tables that, I find them extremely helpful. I think pivot tables and VLOOKUPs are a must for, first person getting into their job. But even just for fun, if you're not in business and you're just, working with things like your bank statement or, birthdays, things of that nature, I think a pivot table can always amp it up and make it even better. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. If there's anything in particular you want me to cover in regards to pivot tables, I am happy to do so. So feel free to put it in the comments. But like I said, I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching. Thanks. Bye.